Chamber Depth. Continuing today with chapter 10 of book 1, The Melancholy of Rama. Valmiki related, after Vashishta finished speaking, King Dasarata was glad to send for Ram and his brother Lakshman, saying, Chamberlain, go and quickly bring here the truly mighty and long-armed Ram with Lakshman for the praiseworthy purpose of removing the impediments of religious acts. Thus sent by the king, the chamberlain went to the inner apartment. After some moments he returned and informed the king, O sire, Ram, whose arms have crushed all his foes, remains wrapped in thoughts in his room, like a bee closed in a lotus at night. He said that he is coming in a moment, but he is so lost in his lonely meditation that he likes nobody to be near him. Thus advised by the chamberlain, the king called one of Ram's attendants, and having given him every assurance, asked him to relate the particulars. On being asked by the king how Ram had come to that state, the attendant replied in a sorrowful mood, Sir, we have also become as lean as sticks in our bodies in sorrow for fading away of your son Ram in his body. The lotus-eyed Ram appears dejected ever since he came back from his pilgrimage in company with the Brahmins. When asked to perform his daily rites, he sometimes discharges them with a sad face, and at other times he wholly dispenses with them. He is averse, O Lord, to bathing, to worshipping the gods, to the distribution of alms, and to his meals also. Even when we trouble him to eat, he does not take his food with a good relish. He no longer allows the playful harem girls to rock him in swinging cradles by, nor does he play under the showering fountains, like in rainwater. No ornaments beset with bud-shaped rubies, no bracelets or necklace, O king, can please him now. In the same manner, those who expect their fall from heaven would be pleased by nothing in it. He is sorrowful, even while sitting in the tree gardens of vines, entertained by flowery breezes, and amidst the looks of maidens playing around him. O king, he looks at whatever is good and sweet, elegant and pleasing to the soul with sorrowful eyes, like one whose eyes are already satisfied with viewing them heaped up in piles. He would speak ill of the girls who would dance merrily before him and exclaim out, Why should these ladies of the harem flutter about in this way, causing grief in me? His doings are like those of a madman, who takes no delight at his food or rest. His vehicles are seats, his baths or other pleasures, however excellent they may be. As regards prosperity or adversity, his rooms, or any other desirable thing, he says that they are all unreal. And then he holds his silence. He cannot be excited by pleasantry or tempted to taste pleasures. He attends to no business but remains in silence. No woman with her loosened locks and tresses and the tempting glances of her eyes can please him, any more than a playful fawn can please the trees in the forest. Like a man sold to savages, he takes delight in lonely places, in the remotest areas, in the banks of rivers and wild deserts. O king, his aversion to clothing, conveyances, food, and presents indicates that he is following the life led by wandering aesthetics. He lives alone in a lonely place and neither laughs nor sings nor cries aloud from a sense of his indifference to them. Seated in a lotus posture with folded legs, he stays with a distracted mind. Reclining his cheek on his left palm, he assumes no pride to himself and does not wish for the dignity of sovereignty. He is neither elated with joy nor depressed by grief or pain. We do not know where he goes, what he does, what he desires, what he meditates upon, or from where or when he comes and what he follows. He is getting lean every day, growing pale day by day like a tree at the end of autumn. He is becoming discolored day after day. O king, his brothers Shatrugna and Lakshman follow all his habits and resemble his very shadow. Repeatedly asked about his unsound mind by his servants, brothers, princes, and mothers, Ram says he has none, then resumes his silence and detachment. He lectures his companions and friends, saying, "Do not set your mind to sensual enjoyments, which are only pleasing for the time being." He has no affection for the richly adorned women of the harem, but rather looks upon them as the cause of destruction presented before him. He often sings in plaintive notes how his life is being spent in vain cares, estranged from those of the easily attainable state of heavenly bliss. Should some courtier speak of his being an emperor one day, he smiles at him as upon a raving madman, and then remains silent as one distracted in his mind. He does not pay heed to what is said to him, nor does he look at anything presented before him. He hates to look upon even the most charming of things, as it is imagery and unreal to suppose the existence of ethereal lake or a lotus growing in it. So it is false to believe the reality of the mind and its conceptions. Saying so, Ram marvels at nothing. Even when sitting among beautiful maids, the darts of Kamadeva, the gods of love, fail to pierce his impenetrable heart like showers of rain cannot pierce a rock. Ram takes his motto: no sensible man should ever wish for riches, which are but the seats of dangers. And he gives all that he has to beggars. He sings some verses to this effect that it is an error to call one thing prosperity and another adversity, when they are both only imaginations of the mind. He repeats some words to the effect that, though it is the general cry, "Oh, I am gone, I am helpless," groan, yet it is a wonder that nobody should take himself to utter detachment. That Ram, the destroyer of enemies, the great oak grown in the gardens of Raghu, should get into such a state of mind is what causes grief in us. We do not know, O great-armed and lotus-eyed king, what to do with him in this state of his mind. We hope only in you. He laughs to scorn the counsels of princes and Brahmins before him and spurns them as if they were fools. He remains inactive with the conviction that the world, which appears to our view, is a vanity, and the idea of self is also a vanity. He has no respect for foes or friends, for himself, for his kingdom, mother, or riches, nor does he pay any regard to prosperity or adversity. He is altogether quiet, without any desire or effort, and devoid of a mainstay. He is neither captivated by anything nor freed from worldly thoughts. These are the reasons which afflict us most. He says, have we to do with riches, with our mothers, with this kingdom and all our activities? Under these impressions, he is about to give up his life. As the swallow grows restless when hurricanes obstruct the rains, so Ram has become impatient under the restraint of his father and mother, his friends and kingdom, his enjoyments, and even his own life. In compassion on your son, incline to root out this annoyance, which, like a harmful vine, has been spreading its shoots. For under such a disposition of his mind, and in spite of his possession of all affluence, he looks upon the enjoyments of the world as his poison. Where is that powerful person on this earth who can restore him to proper conduct? Who is there who will remove the errors that have caused grief in Ram's mind, like the sun removes the darkness of the world? Well, here we have a very interesting situation before us. This is very common, actually, in some parts of the world. People who assume this posture of indifference to the world roam about without any possessions, without any home, living in the forest, seeing the world as a giant illusion, no interest in anything, always in a sober and sorrowful state. People like this, others say, oh, what an incredibly holy person we have here. I couldn't possibly act like that. He must be enlightened. Well, he's not. This is a perfect example of someone who is completely lost in his ego, isn't it? Think about it. If the individual was enlightened, he would be connected with the silent witness, wouldn't he? And if he's connected with the silent witness, we all know from our connection with the silent witness, life is not some dreary, sorrowful, horrible thing. Life is bliss. It is an incredible experience to be alive. No, we're not attached to the illusion. We know everything is an illusion. But we don't run around and mood make about it and act like someone like this. There's a great misunderstanding throughout the Vedic literature that when they talk about the wandering ascetic who roves around like a madman, wearing no clothes, being constantly thrown dirt upon and spat on and said, oh, you're just a fool, that this wandering madman is somehow enlightened. Common misconception in the Vedic literature. common misinterpretation of what is being presented here. This is not how the enlightened operate. They don't live like that at all. They don't act like that at all. So we're given a very wonderful opportunity to understand the ego. You know, the Ramayana, which is the story of Rama, the story of how Krishna assumed a human physiology for the purpose of teaching people about enlightenment, the process of enlightenment, and in particular, the ego. The ego is a wonderful thing, and there's been so much said about it and written about the ego. The ego is very proud of itself. The ego loves to do things like this, roam about like a raving madman, ignoring the beautiful damsels, all this kind of stuff. The ego takes great pride in the not even true knowledge. He heard a story once, he had an experience once that, oh, I'm not fulfilled by all of the things of the world. And then I heard this story, oh, but that's okay because the world is illusion. It's good. It's good that you're not fulfilled and that you've had this experience. And then if the ego is there, the ego says, yes, that's good. Okay, now I am going to reject the whole world. I'll play this game for a while. So that's what he's doing. He's literally playing a game. His ego is playing a game. If he was truly established in being, if he was connected with the silent witness, he wouldn't act like this at all. And we're going to find out throughout the whole Ramayana, which we'll be touching on throughout the Yoga Vasishta, because it's such an important story that helps us to see the ego, the incredible, magical ego that is literally the reason we cannot achieve liberation. It is the thing that we have to master. It is our challenge. And how do we master the ego? Well, there's been all kinds of advice. We have to ignore the ego. We must abase ourselves. The early Christian monks, they would get into the habit of beating themselves with whips and hair blankets and all kinds of things. Self-flagellation. Trying to knock the ego out of their life. Now, it's a total waste of time. Totally ridiculous play of the ego to do these kinds of things. And enlightened people have done these kinds of things in order to show how ridiculous it is. Maybe if you get super ridiculous in the way you operate this body in this illusory universe, somebody will say, that's not enlightenment, that's not liberation, that's the ultimate of bondage. Here is somebody who is so bound up in their own existence that they can't possibly be in liberation. And then maybe that shakes the tree of karmic traces, full of leaves, completely hiding the sun, shakes that tree a little bit, and one leaf breaks loose, and the sun shines through for just a moment. And then the person says, whoa, wait a minute, now I see what's going on. Something's hiding behind all of this play of the ego. And I caught a glimpse of it. And now I think I want to find it again. How do I do that? I have to dismantle this whole tree of karmic traces. So what do? We ignore all this foolishness and we take to a process that we know will balance our karmic traces. We know if we keep stripping off the leaves, breaking the branches, tearing down that tree of karmic traces, that's keeping us from seeing the sun of pure being, one day we will accomplish it. And we have to be reminded from time to time because the ego is always there. And sometimes the ego feels threatened. Whoa, too much information. Whoa, wait a minute now. We're going too fast here. We got to stop all this meditation, all this information, too much information. Life used to be really pleasant. You know what they say, ignorance is bliss. It's true. Once you're in a state of ignorance about who you are, and you have a little bit of a break from the negative karmic traces, and you're surrounded only by the positive karmic traces, then you declare, aha, I have done it. I am enlightened. Life is bliss. I'm living in my little Goloka right now. Wow, I have achieved the goal. And what's happened? You have achieved nothing. Your ego is tricking you, and you will soon be back in another human body after you go through the misery of old age and death. So what a joy. What have you accomplished? Zero. Until you connect with the silent witness, you accomplish zero. This is why we spend every single meditation by beginning with connecting with the silent witness. It is a slippery thing. It slips away very easily. We have to reconnect again and again and again. So we have the instruction. If we find ourselves not connected with the silent witness in meditation, what do? We stop the mantra. We just stop everything. We start all over again. Okay, take a deep breath. We find the silence deep within the mind. Connect with that silence. We become that silence. And for even just a few seconds, we feel the effect of that. And the effect of that is miraculous. When we connect with the silent witness, it does something that goes all the way to the depths of every cell in our body. It is like a switch on the wall that turns on the electric light and lights up the room. Suddenly, for a moment, the room is brilliantly lit. When we connect with the silent witness in meditation, suddenly we don't think about our body. Our body is just effortlessly sitting there. Maybe it was slumping. Maybe we realized we're sitting here supposed to be meditating and we've actually gone to sleep. We're all slumped over. We realize that. So what do? Oh, I'm not meditating anymore. I'm just sitting here asleep. Then we stop the sleeping. We stop the mantra. We stop everything. We reconnect with the silent witness. And what happens when we make that connection is the body just sits up effortlessly. It sits up very straight, actually. It's quite an interesting experience. Almost a surprising experience as we witness how the body reacts to being plugged in to its energy source. And then we have that feeling of bliss, timeless, eternal expansion of consciousness with no boundaries, unbounded pure awareness, observing how this body and this life is playing out. Then we can start our mantra, or we can listen to the Yoga Vashishta, or we can do whatever our task is at the moment. And it is delightful, totally delightful. The ego is completely in the background. And we see it over there. There's the ego. Ego's confused. Wait a minute. I used to be the center of everything. Wait a minute. I used to be the one running the show here. Someone else has taken over. Ego is a little bit in a state of disorientation, but then ego gets organized. Okay, we can't continue like this. This is not good at all. Remember now, this is an illusion. This whole world is all illusory. How should we act if we're in an illusory world? And soon the roles of being a human being take over. We all play these roles. The roles are not being played by us, the real person here. The roles are being played by the ego. And we are allowing the ego to do it. We have to, when the ego jumps up and says, okay, we got to remain silent here. We got to be unattached to everything. Okay, let's get serious here. Let's think our mantra. Let's listen to the reading. Let's become very knowledgeable about all that's being said here. Oh, you've lost the silent witness. Totally lost it. Because those kinds of things don't come up. When you're connected to the silent witness, you are pure eternal being, observing from your vantage point of unbounded pure awareness, using senses that are not even connected to this universe to observe this universe. And everything that's going on is exactly like sitting in the front row seat of a theater and watching the actors on the stage. And you're one of those actors on the stage. But you're not any of those characters, obviously, you're the guy sitting in the front row seat of the theater, watching all this stuff go on, watching how that one over there has a really big ego and he thinks he's this and that, and she thinks she's doing these things. You're observing all this stuff and you're making no judgments. As soon as you start saying, well, you know, they're all just playing a role, this is all ridiculous, what's happened? Ego is back. It's very, very tricky. Ego is extremely tricky, and like a chameleon, it will take on the color of whatever is around it. Okay, now we're in spiritual mode. Now we're in enlightenment mode. Ego says, let me take on the enlightenment mode role. Okay, I can do that enlightenment thing. Watch me be an enlightened person now. I've read all about it. I've heard all about it. I know what I'm supposed to look like, what I'm supposed to be doing. This is all easy. I had nothing to this enlightenment. Here, I can do that. Ego says, and as soon as you become aware of all that, you know, oh, ego wins again. Slipped out of the silent witness. There's no disgrace in that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's caused literally by individual karmic traces. So just accept that. Okay, yep, I still have an individual karmic trace here. Ego is still alive. Now I'm going to remember the connection that I have deep inside to the silence. And I'm going to reestablish my connection with the silent witness. And you just do that all the time. Continually pushing the leaves out of the way so you can see the sun. Sitting in the shade is not the objective. Seeing the sun, becoming the sun, that's the objective. So let's see how Ram is given this information, which he surely will be given soon. As we go to chapter 11, the consolation of Ram. Vishwamitra said, if such is the case, you who are intelligent may go at once and persuade the prodigy of Raghu to come here, as one deer does others. This stupor of Ram is not caused by any accident or affection. I believe it is the development of that superior intellect which rises from the right reasoning of dispassionate men. This is a very important statement. And this is a common way that everyone who is working to realize one's own self, to achieve moksha, liberation, comes into this particular trap. Development of the superior intellect. The thing is, having a superior intellect does not make one enlightened. Right reasoning does not make one enlightened. The only thing that makes one enlightened is truthful, real connection with the silent witness, becoming the silent witness. The becoming of the silent witness is the enlightenment. That's all. So it's very, very simple. We have that experience if we were meditating. We have that experience every day. Little moments of enlightenment. Then we let it slip away. Let Rama come here for a while, and in a moment we shall dispel his delusion as wind drives away clouds from mountaintops. So we know what he's going to say, don't we? After his mental dullness is removed by my reasoning, he will be able to rest in that happy state of mind to which we have arrived. He shall not only attain pure truth and a clear understanding of uninterrupted tranquility. Let me turn on the screen share so you can see what I'm seeing. But he will also secure a plumpness and beauty of figure and complexion as one derives from a potion of ambrosia. He will then fully discharge the proper course of his duties with all his heart and without exception, which will rebound to his honor. He will become strong with a knowledge of both worlds, exempt from the states of pleasure and pain. Then he will look upon gold and stones with a different eye. After the chief of the sages had spoken in this manner, the king resumed the firmness of his mind and sent messengers after messengers to bring Ram to him. By this time, Ram was preparing to rise from his seat in the palace to come to his father, in the manner that the sun rises from the mountain in the east. Surrounded by a few of his servants, he came with his two brothers to the hallowed hall of his father, resembling the heaven of the King of gods. From a distance, he saw his kingly sire seated amidst the assemblies of princes, like Indra, surrounded by the gods. He was accompanied on either side by the sages Vashishta and Vishwamitra, and respectfully attended by his staff of ministers, all well versed in the interpretation of all scriptures. He was fanned by charming maidens, waving fine flappers in their hands, equaling in beauty the goddesses presiding over the quarters of heaven. Vashishta, Vishwamitra, and the other sages, with Dasaratha and his chiefs, saw Ram coming at a distance as beautiful as Skanda Subramanian himself. His qualities of mildness and gravity made him resemble the Himalayas, and he was esteemed by all for the depth and clearness of his understanding. He was handsome and well proportioned, auspicious in his look, but humble and magnanimous in his mind, with loveliness and mildness of his person. He was possessed of all manly prowess. He was just developed to youth, yet he was as majestic as an elderly man. He was neither sad nor merry, but seemed to be fully satisfied with himself, as if he had obtained all the objects of his desires. He was a good judge of the world and possessed of all holy virtues. The purity of his mind attracted all the virtues that met in him. The receptacle of his mind was filled by magnanimity and honorable virtues, and the candor of his conduct showed him in the light of perfection. Endowed with these various virtues and decorated by his necklace and fine apparel, Ram, the supporter of Raghu's race, approached with a smiling face. He bowed his head to his father with the sparkling jewels trembling in his locks, giving his head the graceful appearance of Mount Sumeru, shaken by an earthquake. The lotus-eyed Ram came up to salute the feet of his father when the Lord of the sages, Vishwamitra, was speaking with him. First of all, Ram saluted his father, then the two honorable sages. Next, he saluted the Brahmins, then his relations, and lastly his elders and well-wishing friends. Then he received and returned the salutations of the chiefs and princes as they bowed to him with graceful motions of their heads and respectful addresses. Ram, of godlike beauty and equanimity of mind, approached the silent, sacred presence of his father with the blessings of the two sages. During the act of his saluting the feet of his father, the Lord of the earth repeatedly kissed his head and face and embraced him with fondness. At the same time, Ram, the destroyer of his enemies, embraced his brothers Lakshmana and Shatrughna with an affection as intense as a swan embracing lotus flowers. "My son, be seated upon my lap," said the king to Ram, who, however, took his seat on a fine piece of cloth spread on the floor by his servants. The king then said, "O my son, and receptacle of blessings, you have attained the age of discretion, so do not put yourself to that state of self-mortification as the dull-headed do from their crazy understandings. Know that one attains merit by following the course of his elders, guides, and Brahmins, and not by his persistence in error. So long as we do not allow the seeds of error to have access to us, so long will the train of our misfortunes lie at a distance." Vasishtha said, "O strong-armed prince, you are truly heroic to have conquered your worldly appetites, which are difficult to eradicate as they are fierce in their actions. Why do you allow yourself, like the unlearned, to be drowned in this rolling sea of errors, causing such dull inactivity in you?" Vishwamitra said, "Why are your eyes so unsteady with doubt? Like trembling clusters of blue lotuses, you ought to do away with this unsteadiness and tell us, what is the sadness in your mind? What are these thoughts? What are their names and natures, their number and causes that infest your mind like mice undermine a fabric? I am disposed to think that you are not the person to be troubled with these evils and distempers, to which the base and vile alone are subject. Tell me the craving of your heart, O sinless Ram. They will be required in a manner that will prevent them from reoccurring to you." Oops, I missed a word. I just re-quitted. Ram, the standard of Raghu's race, having listened to the reasonable and graceful speech of the good-intentioned sage, took off his sorrow like a peacock in the roaring of a cloud, in the hope of gaining his object. Well, what just happened there? They managed to get the attention of Ram's ego, didn't they? They flattered the ego. "Oh, you're very strong-armed, you're very intelligent, you are sinless." And so they now have the attention of the ego. What we're trying to do is show Ram that he has slipped away from the silent witness, which is tricky. We need the cooperation of the ego to do that. Okay, thanks for joining today. Have a wonderful rest of the day.